In 1933, a woman in Oklahoma stretched one chicken carcass into 7 days of soup for her family of 5. She never threw away a single bone, a single carrot top, a single crust of bread. Doctors today would call her malnourished. But new research from Cornell University says her instinct about bone broth was decades ahead of modern nutrition science. Number 18 on this list uses an ingredient most people throw straight in the trash, but it contains more minerals than anything you will find in the supplement aisle at Walgreens. Number 7 was so common during the Depression that the government printed the recipe on the back of flour sacks, yet it has completely vanished from American kitchens. These 30 soups kept an entire generation alive on pennies a day. They were designed for one pot, one burner, and one hungry person who could not afford to waste a thing. And here is what nobody tells you. Most of them taste better than anything you can buy in a can today. Before we start, hit that subscribe button because every single one of these recipes still works. Let us count down the 30 forgotten poor man's soups that seniors living alone deserve to know about. Number 30, water soup. It sounds like a joke, but water soup was real, and it fed millions. A pot of boiling water, a diced onion, a pinch of salt, and whatever scraps were in the icebox. Maybe a few potato peels. Maybe a wilted celery stalk. Families in Appalachia and the Dust Bowl Plains survived weeks on this when there was nothing else. The trick was toasting a slice of stale bread and laying it in the bottom of the bowl. The hot broth softened it into something that felt like a meal. It cost almost nothing. For a senior living alone, water soup is still a way to use every last scrap in the refrigerator before grocery day. Number 29, potato peel soup. Nobody threw away potato peels during the Depression. Housewives saved them in a bowl of cold water, then simmered them with an onion and a bay leaf until the broth turned starchy and thick. The peels broke down into something surprisingly creamy. If you had it, a splash of milk. If you could spare it, a knob of butter. 1 pound of potatoes cost about 2 cents in 1934. The peels alone made enough soup for 2 meals. Modern nutritionists now confirm that most of a potato's vitamins sit right under the skin, exactly where our grandmothers were eating them all along. Number 28, Depression-era EGG, drop soup. Long before Chinese takeout arrived in strip malls across America, Depression housewives were making their own version. Bring salted water or thin broth to a rolling boil. Beat 1 egg, then pour it slowly through the tines of a fork into the swirling water. The egg cooks instantly into delicate ribbons. Add a pinch of pepper and maybe a handful of chopped scallion tops saved from last week. 1 AG, 1 pot. 5 minutes, a meal with protein that cost less than a penny and filled the belly of a tired person eating alone at the kitchen table. Number 27, bread soup. Stale bread was currency during the Depression. Nothing got thrown away. For bread soup, you would tear 2 or 3 slices of old bread into a pot, cover them with water or milk, add salt and a little butter, and simmer until everything melted together into a thick porridge. Some families added a beaten egg for richness. Others stirred in a spoonful of bacon drippings. In Pennsylvania Dutch communities, this was called milk soup, and children grew up thinking it was a treat. For one person, a few slices of day-old bread becomes a warm bowl of comfort in under 10 minutes. Number 26, bean bone soup. When a family finished a ham, the bone went straight into the pot. Dried navy beans, a diced onion, salt, and water. That was the whole recipe. The bones simmered for hours, releasing marrow and collagen into a broth so thick the spoon nearly stood up. A pound of dried beans cost 3 cents and made enough soup to last a single person nearly a week. Church ladies across the South passed this recipe through generations. The slow simmer filled small apartments with a smell that made loneliness feel a little less sharp. Number 25. Cabbage soup. Cabbage was the poor man's best friend. A whole head cost a nickel during the Depression and could feed a person for 3 days. Shredded. Cabbage, a diced onion, a can of tomatoes if you could get them, salt, pepper, and water. Simmer until the cabbage goes soft and sweet. Some people added a ham hock, others dropped in a handful of rice or barley. The soup tasted better the second day as the flavors deepened overnight in the icebox. Cabbage soup asks almost nothing of the cook, and for a senior eating alone, a single head of cabbage still stretches further than almost anything in the produce aisle. Number 24. Hoover stew. Named mockingly after President Hoover, this was the soup of the desperate. Hot dogs sliced thin, a can of stewed tomatoes, a can of corn, and cooked macaroni. Everything dumped into one pot. Shantytown kitchens called Hoovervilles served this by the ladleful to men who had lost everything. It was filling, cheap, and required no skill whatsoever. A senior living alone can make a full pot for under $3 today, and it keeps in the refrigerator for 4 days. Not elegant, but honest, warm, and ready when you need it. Number 23. Onion soup. Not the fancy French kind with a broiled cheese crust. The Depression version was simpler and arguably better. Slice 4 or 5 onions thin. Cook them slowly in butter or bacon grease until they turn deep brown, almost caramelized. Add water, salt, and a crust of stale bread torn into pieces. That long, slow browning created a sweetness and depth that no bouillon cube could match. The whole pot cost pennies. The smell of onions cooking low and slow in a quiet kitchen is one of the most comforting sounds a person living alone can hear. Number 22. Tomato soup from scratch. Before Campbell's became the default, every grandmother in America made tomato soup from real tomatoes. Canned tomatoes, a little butter, a pinch of baking soda to cut the acid, salt, and a splash of milk stirred in at the end. The baking soda trick, identical to what British housewives used, stopped that harsh, tinny bite without adding sugar. A can of tomatoes cost about 5 cents in 1935. The homemade version tastes nothing like the can. It tastes like someone cared enough to stand at the stove for 15 minutes. Number 21. Rivell soup. This Pennsylvania Dutch classic has almost completely disappeared. You make tiny flour dumplings by rubbing a simple dough of egg and flour between your fingers until pea-sized crumbles fall into simmering milk or broth. The Rivells cook in 2 minutes, turning the thin liquid into something hearty and satisfying. A cup of flour, 1 egg, a quart of milk. The whole pot costs almost nothing. The act of rubbing those little dumplings into the pot is meditative, the kind of slow kitchen work that gives a quiet evening purpose. Number 20. Split pea soup. Dried split peas were a staple of every Depression pantry. You only need a 1-pound bag, a leftover ham bone, a diced onion, and a couple of carrots. Simmer for 2 hours and the peas dissolve into a thick, mossy green soup that sticks to the ribs. No blender needed. The peas do the work themselves. By 1936, the USDA was distributing dried peas through relief programs because they were the cheapest source of protein available. For one person, a single batch lasts 4 or 5 days. It freezes beautifully, and the smell of split peas simmering on a winter afternoon can make a small kitchen feel like home. Number 19. Dandelion soup. Before chemical lawn treatments turned every yard into a poison carpet, dandelion greens were free food. Depression-era families picked them from fields and roadsides every spring. Sautéed with garlic and onion, then simmered in water with a potato for body, dandelion soup was bitter, earthy, and packed with vitamins A and C. It costs nothing, literally nothing. Modern foragers have rediscovered what the Depression generation knew all along. The weeds growing in the cracks are sometimes the most nutritious thing available. Number 18, potato soup. The king of Depression soups. Peel and dice 4 potatoes. Simmer them with an onion in salted water until soft. Mash roughly in the pot, then stir in a splash of milk, a pat of butter, and salt and pepper. Done. This fed more American families during the 1930s than any other single recipe. The starch makes it creamy without cream. The simplicity made it possible on the worst days, when energy was low and the kitchen felt too big for one person. A pot of potato soup and a piece of toast is a complete meal that costs less than $1. Number 17, corn chowder. Sweet corn, cut off the cob or poured from a can, simmers with diced potatoes, onion, and milk. A strip of bacon, fried crisp and crumbled on top, brightened the bowl when the budget allowed. Depression families in the Midwest grew their own corn and dried it for winter. The natural sugars in the corn gave the chowder a sweetness that children loved and old folks craved. For a senior cooking alone, a can of corn and 2 potatoes become a chowder rich enough to make the evening feel less empty. Number 16, mulligan stew. Born in hobo camps along the railroad lines, mulligan stew was the original community soup. Everyone threw something into the pot: a carrot, a potato, a scrap of meat, a handful of beans. The rule was simple: you eat, you contribute. The name stuck, and families across America adopted the concept at home. Clean out the refrigerator, dice everything small, simmer in water with salt and pepper. No recipe, no rules, just whatever you have, made into something warm. For one person, it is the best way to make sure nothing in the icebox goes to waste. Number 15, navy bean soup. The United States Senate cafeteria has served navy bean soup every single day since 1903. That is not folklore. It is the congressional record. The recipe is almost absurdly simple. Dried navy beans, water, smoked ham hocks, onion, butter, salt, and pepper. Simmer until the beans are soft and the broth turns cloudy white. During the Depression, navy beans were distributed free through government surplus programs. A 1-pound bag fed a family for 3 days. The Senate still serves it because it still works. Cheap, filling, nutritious, and deeply satisfying. Number 14, pepper pot soup. Philadelphia's signature soup nearly vanished entirely. Tripe, the lining of a cow's stomach, simmered with potatoes, onions, celery, and crushed peppercorns in a rich broth. Legend says it fed Washington's army at Valley Forge. By the Depression, street vendors sold it from steaming carts for a nickel a bowl. Tripe cost almost nothing because most people would not touch it. But slow cooked in pepper pot, it turned silky and tender, the peppery broth warming from the inside out. The vendors are gone now. The recipe survives in old Philadelphia cookbooks, waiting for someone to remember. Number 13, lentil soup. Lentils cook faster than any other dried legume. No soaking is required. 45 minutes from bag to bowl. During the Depression, families who could not afford the fuel for a long simmer relied on lentils when beans took too long. Diced carrots, celery, and onion, a can of tomatoes, and a cup of brown lentils. Season with salt, pepper, and a bay leaf. The lentils break down into a thick, almost meaty soup that needs nothing else. For a senior living alone, lentil soup is the fastest route from an empty stomach to a filling meal. 1 pot, 1 burner, and less than an hour. Number 12, vegetable scrap broth. During the Depression, housewives kept a bag or a bowl in the icebox. Every onion end, carrot top, celery leaf, potato peel, and parsley stem went into it. When the bag was full, everything went into a pot with water and simmered for an hour. The result was a golden broth, richer than anything from a can or a cube. Strained and stored, it became the base for every soup that week. This habit, saving scraps for broth, is the single most useful cooking trick a person living alone can adopt. It turns waste into wealth. Number 11, chili bean soup. Not Texas chili, not competition chili. This is depression chili. 1 can of kidney beans, a diced onion, a spoonful of chili powder, and water. Maybe a can of tomatoes if the budget stretched. Simmered until thick, served with crackers or cornbread. Chili powder was cheap, and it made bland beans taste like something worth sitting down for. WPA workers ate this from tin cups on road crews across the Southwest. For one person, a pot of chili bean soup lasts 3 days and reheats better each time. Number 10, cream of anything soup. Depression cooks. Invented the formula that Campbell's later packaged and sold for billions. Melt butter, stir in flour, add milk slowly, stirring until thick. Then add whatever vegetable you had. Celery, mushrooms, asparagus ends, potato. The white sauce base made anything taste rich and creamy. The technique takes 5 minutes to learn and works every single time. A senior living alone does not need 17 cans in the pantry. They need 1 recipe and whatever vegetable is on sale this week. Number 9, chicken foot soup. Chicken feet cost almost nothing because nobody wanted them. Depression-era cooks knew they were packed with collagen and gelatin that turned plain water into a thick, nourishing broth. Simmered for hours with onion, celery, salt, and peppercorns, chicken foot broth set up like jelly when cooled. Modern science confirms what grandmothers already knew. The collagen in chicken feet supports joint health, gut lining, and skin elasticity, exactly what seniors need most. Asian and Latin markets still sell chicken feet for pennies a pound. The secret never left those communities. Number 8, barley soup. Barley was the grain of the poor. A handful thrown into any soup pot would swell and thicken the broth, turning thin liquid into a meal that stuck with you for hours. Beef barley soup used the cheapest cuts, simmered until the meat shredded and the barley turned soft and chewy. A pound of pearl barley cost 3 cents during the Depression, and it lasted weeks. For a person eating alone, barley is the difference between broth and a meal. It absorbs flavor, adds texture, and makes a small amount of meat go twice as far. Number 7, flour sack soup. When the government distributed flour through relief programs, the recipe on the back of the sack included a simple soup. Brown flour in butter until it smells like toasted nuts. Add water slowly, stirring to prevent lumps. Season with salt and pepper. That was the entire recipe, browned flour soup. It sounds impossible, but the toasting creates a nutty depth that transforms plain water into something that tastes almost like gravy. Families with nothing, absolutely nothing, could still make this. The recipe disappeared when the flour sacks did, but the technique still works and it still costs almost nothing. Number 6, garlic broth. 40 cloves of garlic, a bay leaf, sage, a drizzle of olive oil, and water. Simmer it for 30 minutes, then strain. During the Depression, garlic was considered peasant food, something Italian and Greek immigrants relied on when money ran out. The broth was believed to cure colds, settle stomachs, and restore strength after illness. Modern research supports nearly all of those folk claims. Allicin, the compound released when garlic is crushed, has documented antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties. For a senior living alone through flu season, A pot of garlic broth is medicine and supper in the same bowl. Number 5. Buttermilk soup. Across the rural South and Midwest, buttermilk soup was a summer staple, served cold. It was simple: buttermilk, crumbled cornbread, diced onion, salt and pepper, mixed in a bowl and eaten with a spoon. It sounds strange, but the tangy buttermilk and the crumbly cornbread created something cool and filling on days when the kitchen was too hot to light the stove. Buttermilk cost almost nothing during the Depression because it was the byproduct of butter making, practically a waste product. For seniors who struggle with appetite in the heat, cold buttermilk soup is a forgotten answer that requires no cooking at all. Number 4. Bone marrow soup. Butchers during the Depression gave away marrow bones because nobody asked for them. Housewives roasted the bones until the marrow turned golden, then simmered them for hours with onion, celery, and a splash of vinegar to draw out the minerals. The result was a broth so rich it felt like a meal on its own. Calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, and collagen all leached into the water. Modern bone broth companies now charge $8 a carton for what Depression grandmothers made for free. A senior living alone can ask any butcher for marrow bones today. Most will still give them away or charge almost nothing. Number 3. Peanut butter soup. This one shocks people, but peanut butter soup was a real Depression staple, with roots in West African and Southern cooking that go back centuries. Sauté diced onion and celery. Add a quart of broth or water. Stir in 3 tablespoons of peanut butter until dissolved. Season with salt and a pinch of cayenne. The peanut butter melts into a creamy, protein-rich soup that tastes nothing like a sandwich and everything like comfort. George Washington Carver promoted peanut soup as a nutritious, affordable meal for poor families across the South. A jar of peanut butter and a few vegetables become 3 days of soup for one person. Number 2. Poor man's potato and onion soup with a poached egg. This was the Depression supper that could be made in 15 minutes with ingredients that cost almost nothing. Dice 2 potatoes and 1 onion, simmer in salted water until tender, then crack an egg directly into the simmering broth and let it poach for 3 minutes. The egg white sets around the yolk, creating a protein-rich centerpiece floating in a starchy, savory broth. Ladle everything into a bowl. The yolk breaks open like liquid gold, enriching every spoonful. For a senior eating alone, this is a complete meal. Protein, carbohydrate, vitamins, all in one bowl from one pot in a quarter of an hour. No recipe book needed, no special ingredients. Just a potato, an onion, an egg, and the quiet wisdom of a generation that knew how to turn almost nothing into something worth sitting down for. Number 1. Stone soup. Not the fairy tale, the real thing. During the Depression, families in rural communities across America practiced a version of stone soup without calling it that. One neighbor brought an onion, another brought a carrot, a third brought a potato. Someone had a bone, someone else had salt. Alone, none of them had enough for a meal. Together, they made a pot of soup that fed everyone. The stone was not magic. The community was. For seniors living alone today, this is the most important recipe on the list. Not because of the ingredients, but because of what it really means. You do not have to eat alone. A pot of soup is an invitation. It always has been. Try one of these this week, just one. Try the potato soup, the egg drop soup, or the bean bone soup. Then come back and tell me which one your grandmother used to make. Tell me if the flour sack soup surprised you. Tell me if the peanut butter soup made you a believer. Share which one you are going to try in the comments, because these were not just soups, they were survival. They were dignity on a dime. They were proof that even when the world falls apart, a warm bowl and a little wisdom can hold a person together. Your grandmother knew. Now you know too.